All right, today we're going to dive into the mindset of a generation that's often kind of overlooked, maybe even a little misunderstood. Generation X. We're going to explore what's been called the Latchkey Psyche to really get what makes them tick.
It's a great question, right? You look at them, they're often called the invisible generation, but their whole vibe is so distinct. And if you really want to understand it, the answer is hiding in an experience that pretty much defined their entire childhood.
The key to unlocking the whole thing starts with this one term, latchkey kid. Now, this isn't just some dusty, nostalgic phrase. It's the actual foundational experience that hardwired their entire way of looking at the world.
So, first, let's just go back to where it all started. Let's see how a whole generation basically learned to fend for itself. Okay, so we're talking about the kids born roughly between 1965 and 1980. This was a time when divorce rates were climbing and more households had two working parents. This meant a lot of kids came home from school, let themselves in with that classic key on a string around their neck, and they were just on their own for hours.
And look, this wasn't just a few kids here and there. For the first time, really on a huge scale, a major cultural shift was happening. This early, kind of forced self-reliance became the absolute bedrock of their generational identity. They learned to solve their own problems because, well, they had no choice.
But here's the thing. This self-reliance wasn't learned in some gentle, supportive class. Nope. It was forged in a world of immediate and sometimes harsh consequences.
Psychologists have a term for this. They call it a high-contingency environment. It sounds all academic, but the idea is actually super simple. Your actions had direct, unbuffered results. There was no one there to remind you to do your homework, no one to make sure you packed your lunch. If you forgot, you faced the consequences. End of story. This setup created this incredibly powerful feedback loop. You make a mistake, say you forget your lunch money. The consequence is immediate and personal. You don't eat. So what's the result? Your brain literally gets rewired. Vigilant planning and thinking about risk, those aren't just skills you learn, they become instinct. So this environment forced Gen X to develop a very specific set of mental tools just to get by. You can almost think of it as their self-reliance playbook. One of the absolute core tools in that playbook is something called defensive pessimism. Now, it is crucial to understand that this is not the same as cynicism. Cynicism is just believing things are going to fail. Defensive pessimism is a strategy. You think about what could go wrong so you can prepare for it and hopefully prevent it. It's totally pragmatic, not just negative.
And another key tool is this deep-seated loyalty to competence over systems. Why? Well, think about it. For a latchkey kid, survival depended on what you could actually do, not who you worked for or what your title was. Your personal skill, your ability to figure things out, that's valued way more than any corporate logo or fancy job title.
So, okay, these childhood experiences, they didn't just vanish into thin air. Let's take a look at how that psyche shows up in the Gen X adult right here in the modern world.
Social media is a perfect example. Younger generations who grew up totally online, they often see it as a fantastic opportunity for connection. But for Gen X, whose brains are just wired for risk assessment, it often looks more like a risk of exposure. I mean, why would you broadcast your entire life when your whole upbringing trained you to be cautious in private?
This idea perfectly captures it. For them, visibility is exposing. When you've learned from a young age that mistakes have real, immediate consequences and there's no safety net, the idea of creating a permanent public online record of your life can feel incredibly dangerous.
So what happens is we start to see these four key patterns emerge in adulthood. A really fierce independence, which by the way can make it super hard to delegate things. A highly analytical and strategic mind. A definite preference for privacy over public display. And, because they've been handling stuff on their own since they were kids, an almost unnerving calm and resilience when a crisis hits.
But that fierce independence, it is absolutely a double-edged sword. So let's take a quick look at both sides of that coin.
So on one side, you get these incredible strengths. They're excellent problem solvers, deeply self-motivated, and have amazing pragmatic planning skills. But the cost of all that strength can be a real difficulty in asking for help, a tendency to kind of overfunction for other people, and maybe a more muted way of expressing emotion.
And let's be clear, these strengths are invaluable in pretty much any situation. You definitely want a Gen Xer in your corner when things go south. They are the ultimate self-starters and pragmatic problem solvers.
But, and this is a big but, on the flip side, that same powerful instinct can lead straight to burnout.
The reluctance to show vulnerability or to ask for help means they often take on way too much, both at work and in their personal lives. It's that classic "I'll just do it myself" reflex in action. So, if you remember just one thing from this whole explainer, let it be this. The Gen X worldview is not random. It's a direct, totally logical outcome of a childhood that was defined by early independence and high contingency. It's a psyche that was literally built to prioritize competence, caution, and above all else, self-reliance.
Which, of course, leaves us with one final, really fascinating question. In today's hyper-connected and constantly changing world, is this Latchkey Psyche a hidden superpower for navigating chaos? Or is it an outdated survival guide, built for a world that just doesn't exist anymore?